Tyler,
What's up?
we gotta figure out a new intro.
Why?
Because every week I just go, Tyler.
Oh, maybe I'll do it. Nick.
All right, ready? Nick.
Yo, Nick.
Why did I say it?
I don't know.
I was preparing you. What's up, Tyler?
Not much. I recorded my midweek this week, and
Oh,
I
yeah?
was like, Phillies are in the postseason. First game tonight. I feel like it's finally fall weather. Work's progressing. It's like exciting time of year. But enough of that. Today we have Jeremy Kassel on the podcast from Kassel Construction. He is a contractor based up near Albany, New York, just outside of Albany, but a built-on remodeling contractor, does a ton of work with fine home building, JLC Live, live demonstrations, writes articles, just a really knowledgeable, humble, built-on contractor that I think we can all get some takeaways from. So I really enjoyed speaking with him about what he does with business, his family life. It was a good conversation. We definitely have to get him back on because we didn't hit a lot of what he wanted to talk about in like his questionnaire.
We talked a lot about what he wasn't prepared to,
Yeah.
nor did he think he'd ever talk about.
Massive curveballs that like I was just on my computer looking up and just like found somewhat perplexing and interesting and was like, who the heck knew? And went off on a bit of a tangent there. But thanks to Jeremy for opening up and obliging me with my probably ignorance and answering my questions, but just some interest that I have, and we figured we had him on the line, so why not ask? You got to ask the tough questions, right? So I think you guys will enjoy this one. We're definitely going to be getting him back on. Short timeline today. Everyone busy, a lot of things going on, but I hope you guys enjoy this one.
This podcast is brought to you by Andersen. When making decisions on the product you spec, we're always thinking about what's right for the customer and what the specific project's needs are. We're also thinking about our reputation, and Andersen knows that the product they manufacture are part of the legacy that we're all trying to build.
From Fibrex composite material that delivers performance and looks at a budget-friendly price point to the Easy Connect reinforced joining system that makes it easier to assemble oversized window walls with less people, to Andersen's best performing A-Series product line with the most energy efficient windows and doors Andersen has ever offered. Whatever your building needs are, they've got you covered. Andersen knows it's about fewer callbacks and products that will perform over time. That's why they test their products beyond the threshold required by the industry.
Andersen appreciates that. While it may be their products going into our projects, it's ultimately our brands that we're building. And they're proud to be helping us craft our legacies. Learn more about their product offering at andersenwindows.com.
So how do you become the GC every sub wants to work with? Get on board with construction management software like Buildertrend. The platform gives subs access to an online portal where they can view a project schedule, send your team a message, and participate in the bidding process. That is convenient. It makes their job easier, increases the chance they'll choose to work with you again on future projects.
So to see more about Buildertrend's sub portal in action and learn how you can go from it's complicated to #relationship goals with every sub you hire, go to buildertrend.com/MC demo and schedule a call with their team.
I don't know if Nick knows that. So I was up at the lake, Rachel's parents' house, and I had posted something, and Jeremy was like, is that Sleepy Hollow Lake? And I was like, yeah. And then he was like, oh, we work for some people in there, and told me their names. And I was like, no way, that's Rachel's parents' neighbors.
What?
So like Jeremy had
door
been
neighbor.
working, like next door on their neighbor's house, and Rachel's parents had been there for however long. So then when Rachel's parents needed work done, I was like, I'm not going up there to work. It's way too far, and I have my own stuff. So Jeremy ended up doing a bunch of stuff with like the guys he works with at Rachel's parents' lake house.
That's amazing. Now, did you guys know each other beforehand?
No, I mean, just through social. But like had never met or anything. And it was just like he saw some of my videos and then was like, I feel like you're in Sleepy Hollow. And then like spoke a little bit more because of that. But I don't think we'd even met until like JLC or something.
So I don't know if you guys remember, but I met you guys both with Johnny at lunch at JLC Live in a hotel with my Huber rep, who
Yes.
is Mike Duvall, and his on Instagram he's Big Bear USMC vet.
Yeah.
So
I don't
this is
remember.
like
I don't remember
2018.
what hotel did we get lunch at?
I do recall that. I feel like we were like getting up and leaving or something, or somebody was leaving. We said hi to
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Was it the Omni, which is connected to the convention center?
Yeah.
Mm, I vaguely remember because I feel like I've only been in that hotel once. Um, but you would be accurate. I don't recall that.
That's okay. You don't remember every single lunch you've been invited to in the industry?
I remember like 80% of the lunches, but not that one.
The 20% that had a liquid lunch component, you don't remember?
Oh, that might answer it. That would be it. Um,
So
so that was what 2018 you said?
I think it was 2018. I don't
Yeah.
remember.
Wow.
It was around there, if not earlier.
Hmm. That's crazy.
Definitely.
So I will just tell you this. I have a hard-ish stop at 5 o'clock. Only
Okay.
because my wife is in Portland, Oregon for work for the week, and I got to get one of my kids to gymnastics at 6.
We'll wrap up at 4:45. So
Okay.
we're good.
What's your wife
I
do
could
for
I could
work?
go till 5. She has a
I
new
too
job.
have.
She work.
I was gonna say I
Go
too
ahead.
have to pick up my daughter, so it works out great.
Okay. My wife did work in academia for like 13 years, and she just left, and she's now the operations manager at a building in downtown Albany that houses a not-for-profit organization called the Community Loan Fund. And basically, there are minority owned businesses that are tenants in the building, but there's also like an investment trust component to that, whether it's outside investors from this like heavily minority like neighborhood can invest in the building, or the tenants who have businesses can invest in the building, and they're putting an addition on the building. So she's the operations manager, so she has to like largely oversee a lot of that addition on this 100-year-old building in downtown Albany, meet with the city, meet with the GC, meet with the architect, and then manage a lot of like the tenants and the investors, things like that. But she's more on the operations side, not the business side. Well, I
So
guess they sort of go hand in hand.
what's she doing in Oregon?
Well, she was sightseeing all weekend. I got all the cool photos from Mount Hood and the Columbia River Gorge and everything. The organization is based in Portland,
Oh, okay.
and it's like a conference. So
That's cool. Yeah, why did she end up leaving academia?
she just got burned out,
Yeah.
basically. She was in administration. She has a PhD in Spanish linguistics, and she couldn't find like a tenure track professor job within like reasonable geographic distance to upstate New York. So she went into administration, which worked well, but academia is tough. It burns a lot of people out.
Yeah, I feel
Um,
like lately even more so than before as well.
oh yeah, I mean, yeah. Don't get me started.
So for listeners who don't know, you are located essentially for argument's sake near Albany, New York, which is what, like 2 hours north, you're northwest of New York City?
So it's I would say 2.5 hours due north of New York City,
Okay.
Hmm.
and we're I'd say probably 2.5 hours due west of Boston. And yeah, we live just maybe 10 minutes south of downtown. Like as soon as
Alba-
if you drive south out of
Albany's only
downtown
two and a
Albany,
half hours from me.
Yeah, like they're
yeah,
very
I mean
you're
with
in like eastern uh New York State, like close to the Mass border.
I know.
mhm.
I guess I thought, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it says about 2 hours 56 minutes right now.
So
I've just,
are you
Yeah, I mean
from up there, Jeremy?
I'm from Syracuse originally, which is right
Okay.
in the middle of the state.
hmm.
Yeah.
And my wife's
And
originally from Rochester, which is going farther west towards Buffalo.
yep. And how'd you guys end up there?
She was already living here and we met at an engagement party. And she basically made me move here, made me marry her, made me, have kids
Made
with
you.
her, the whole nine.
Jeez. And how
That's
did
So,
a
you
that's a classic husband thing. I told someone the other day. I was like, "Yeah, Meg made me have all these kids," and she's like, "Are you serious?" She was like, "You wanted the kids more than I did, or the fourth kid more than I did," and I was like, "Oh, I like to tell a
I
different story."
didn't I didn't know you had four. I thought maybe you had three.
Yeah, we just kind of go under the radar and had another one. So that's it, though. Four is done. We're capped.
are you? I thought that was
Well,
TBD.
I was supposed to get capped, but I didn't. I had a unfortunate funeral. Well, a funeral that I had to reschedule. But yes, we are done.
Um how did you so Jeremy, you obviously went to college. How did you end up doing what you were doing? I see you started your business like 2005, right? I
Hmm.
guess it was right before you had your kid. Now that you just said that, right when you were
No,
hanging up when you were your racing days, the first hang it up.
so, so started my business in 2005 in Syracuse. Moved to Albany in 2010. Married in 2012. Kids in 2012.
Okay.
Um, I started So after I bachelor's degree, moved out to Colorado to be a ski bum because that's was just kind of the thing to do. I was really into skiing back in the day. I had a cousin that moved out to Park City, Utah, and I kind of followed in his footsteps. I moved to Breckenridge, Colorado. I was kind of sort of being groomed by a professor at school to go to grad school and thought about it, thought about kind of getting into either urban planning or city government, some sort of like urban studies related career path. And my sister, who works here in Albany, worked in government, did not for profit work. And kind of like when I saw how the sausage was made, so to say, I decided I didn't want to go into government or urban planning or anything like that. And I kind of
Yeah.
always liked being outdoors, liked working with my hands. Um, and I went to work for a family friend of ours who was a contractor up in Saratoga Springs and loved the work. Wasn't thrilled about working for him. Put in, like a 1 year commitment and moved back home then in 2005 and started my business with another family friend who was already in business, had a lot of work, was well established, 10 years older than me. And it just kind of took off from there.
What was your experience level like when you started? What were you just underneath of him? Did you have basic skill set?
With my partner in Syracuse or the contractor in Saratoga?
Just when you first got into the industry, like had you done that and kicked that around when you were younger, or was it like I started doing this, I enjoyed it, and I just ran with it?
No, I didn't. I really had like no building experience, and nothing ever came naturally, and I feel like it still doesn't come naturally to me. Um, I didn't grow up in construction. My dad wasn't in the building trades. The closest thing that we had was my great grandfather. When he came here from Russia, he was a blacksmith for Gustav Stickley from Stickley Furniture.
Yeah.
That's like the only sort of like handy bloodline in my family, I guess, because my dad is super handy and mostly on the automotive side, but I was like not handy, or I did not have like a knack for construction at all. I mean, I was very, very green when I started.
You're Jewish, right?
Hmm.
Are there is like Russian Jewish people a big thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's I didn't realize that you were like family coming from Russia. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I feel
So
like
my
I
understanding
don't
is,
like think of that when I think of Jewish people.
so yeah, I would say my understanding is that most of our family on both sides, my mom's side and dad's side, are Latvia and Lithuania, which I got to be honest with you, I don't know if either of those two exist anymore since the Soviet Union fell, or if they exist
Yeah.
now, but it was something different then.
Lithuania is like Eastern European, right?
Hmm.
This is interesting. I did not realize that. I'm trying to like look this up right now. I feel like I'm
What are
super
you looking
ignorant.
up?
I just didn't realize that like there was I mean, I guess that makes sense. I don't know. I feel like when I
I
think of
mean,
like Eastern European and Russian people, I like don't think of Jewish people. I don't know why. Maybe that's really screwed up. I'm just being honest right now.
I don't
Jeremy's
know.
like, I
A
have
lot.
no idea, man.
Yeah, I guess I am what I am, right? In the summertime, I get very, very dark skin in the
Blonde.
summer, and people, and I've blue eyes. People ask me all the time, like, "Are you Greek? Are you Italian? Are you
Yeah.
Mediterranean?" So,
You definitely don't look Eastern European, that's for sure. Um yeah, so it's funny because you obviously I know you say that it doesn't come easy to you, but you're fairly involved at this point in the construction world, writing for some publications, some magazines, speaking, and presenting at JLC. Uh, why do you think like is do you feel that it not coming easy to you and it being something that you enjoy that you're just immersing yourself in it so much that you want to be involved with it any way that you can?
um, I guess I never really thought of it like that. Um, I guess that's one way to look at it. For me, like the other stuff, the writing and the JLC live stuff, I really enjoy teaching and I really enjoy writing. And in some sense, I kind of wish I had been an English major, not done urban and public policy studies, although I don't know if that would have changed my career path. Um, to me, it's almost like another challenge to try to overcome.
Hmm.
So, like developing an article is like you're basically starting with nothing. You're starting with like a concept on a job site and developing in that into an article by trying to be articulate and trying to write well and working with an editor to sort of streamline things. This might sound crazy. It's almost like I enjoy the process more than the outcome. You
Yeah.
know, I love that challenge of like developing it. And same thing with like teaching a class at JLC Live. I like developing the class and I love teaching the class. And at the end, it's nice to get a pat on the back, but then it's like, okay, it's just sort of done. You
I think
know,
that that's
I
very
don't know if that
similar
makes
to
sense.
like our no, because I feel like that's similar to our jobs as well. Like by the time the job is closing out and the pieces of the puzzle are coming together, it's not that you're over it, but like you've already conquered that mountain. I
Hmm.
think that like the beginning stages of that and trying to figure out how it's going to come together and putting the pieces together, that for me is the most rewarding part. And then when it starts coming together, like obviously it's rewarding, but there's less of a challenge at that point. That at that point it's more so going through the motions and ensuring that everything's continuing to functioning as designed. But I feel like it's that thrill of the hunt, and getting things going and planning and accounting for everything for me that provides the
Hmm.
challenge, which is very engaging for me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, so this is, I mean, it's off topic, but it's not off topic. But I was looking up the history of Jewish people in Russia, and at one time, Russia had the largest population of Jewish people in the world. I didn't know that. I feel like I'm
Interesting.
super ignorant now. Now it doesn't. Now it's Israel, United States, Germany, Russia, then Australia.
Hmm.
Oh,
But
interesting.
it's
Australia.
yeah.
Now
Um,
of all of those people, how many are in the building trades?
it's not
Probably
going to tell
that
me
many.
that. I'd have to do a little bit more digging
Why?
to
Why?
find that out.
But why do you say that?
Me to find it out?
No, Jeremy. Like,
No, me.
why do you
Um,
think that there's so little people, so little Jewish people in the building trades?
I don't know. It's a good question. I think that there's like certain cultures just gravitate towards certain professions.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, listen, every culture is going to have a stereotype about it, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I don't know. I think like I do know, I do know other Jewish people in the trades, but there's very, very, very few of us. And,
Yeah, I would
and,
agree with that.
and I don't really know why. I don't know if it's because our families, so to say, sort of push towards the white collar professions. Like think of the very stereotypical ones, like doctors, lawyers, accountants, things like that. um my parents certainly never pushed me in that direction. I mean, again, my dad wasn't in the building trades, but my dad sort of uh grew up more in the automotive industry, and my mom was a school teacher. And all of their parents and grandparents never had those like white collar professional jobs.
Mm.
This is interesting. I'm gonna have to read more of this article. I'm learning so much right now. Um, are you still like how involved are you with the Jewish religion? Are you still like heavily involved with it?
Oh yeah, very deeply.
Yeah, and were your parents like that too?
Hmm.
And so you raise your kids that way?
Hmm.
Is your wife Jewish?
Hmm.
Man, I'm learning a lot right now. So what do you do for your children? Are your kids go to public school? They go to private school? You homeschool them?
So no, so they currently go to private school actually, but they'll probably by middle school they'll go to private school, or excuse me,
Okay.
public school.
And why do you send them to private school? I'm sorry if this is not what you want to talk about. I just find it interesting.
It's certainly not what I was expecting.
Well, that's
Um,
good. That's the plan. Keep you on
I
your
wonder.
toes.
I'm sure the listeners are like, why are we even talking about this? Um,
Yeah, but for the few
well,
Jewish people that listen, they're going to be like, "This is
Yeah.
great.
We're just
right
I want
trying
for
to
to
the
be in
for
pull
the.
we're
I want to
trying to
be.
we're trying to hit the numbers,
I want
man.
to be on the building industry."
really, I mean, really, like the reason is to give them like a stronger Jewish identity, like learn
Mm.
customs, learn how to read and write and speak Hebrew, all that sort of stuff. So I went to
So
private
they're
school from
they're going
kindergarten through
they're going
six.
to like a specific like Jewish school.
Hmm.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I mean, they certainly get like all the general studies as well that everyone else in New York State gets, like all the Common Core stuff they get. It's
Yeah.
not only like religious stuff.
Mhm.
They get every other general studies stuff that everyone else in New York gets as well.
I find that interesting to be honest, like I don't know, my experience with religion was slightly skewed and like my parents were brought up pretty strict Catholic and went to like Catholic school through high school and then tried to get them to like private universities. So I think that it was shoved down their throat so much as kids that like we had the stark opposite experience where there wasn't a ton of religion and culture put in front of us growing up. But I do find it interesting um, to people who do experience that now because I feel like um, it's less common now. And I'm not, I mean, I can't speak to the Jewish religion, but at least with Christianity as a whole, that it's less prominent now than it was even like within one generation of our parents.
Yeah, I agree with that. For us, it's there's a lot of traditions that we like and that we keep alive, but it's also like this huge, strong sense of community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have ever been to like think of like a Greek fest, for example. You go to a Greek church, there's a huge tent, everyone's eating Greek food, there's music, there's dancing, and it's like that sense of community. We're like super, super tight into it.
Yeah.
Mm. I think religion in general is, I think that's the importance of it, is what you just said, the community aspect of it, where it's like, we're Catholic, but we don't, we're not involved with the church. We're not involved with that community. It's just we that's how we identify for as our religion, but we're not involved in it. And and then I we have friends that are involved in the Catholic community, the Mormon community. It's there's always this conversation about the community itself, and you know Brad Levitt, for example, like him and his wife were here, and my wife and I got dinner with them, and my wife was like, hey, "You guys are Mormon. I want to know more about the Mormon religion." And for 2.5 hours, we talked about it to the point where she's like, my wife was like, "We should be Mormon." But the point was, and like where it came from was that the sense of community and how everyone works together, and you know it's funny because like what you were saying a minute ago, everyone has kind of a stereotype, um, and that is that and the sense of religion I think are really interesting, and how you're tying it to the building community, where it's like you know th- in modern day, I guess what Tyler was just saying, like in modern day, at least for us Catholic, it's not as relevant. I don't think that there's a lot of people, as many people practicing as there are in like the Jewish community, like their religion, right? And I think that is being diminished, and then there becomes this negative stereotype there, where it's like
Mhm.
it's interesting to me, and I think that that's where you look at groups of people that band together and that support one another regardless of where they want to be. And I guess that's why I was so curious as to like why you think that the building the building community doesn't have as many Jewish people in it. And you can talk about the other careers that community is kind of looking at as like, hey, this is what you're supposed to do.
I
Yeah,
guess to
and
cut to the chase, Jeremy's starting a Jewish trade school. You heard it here first.
Essentially, yeah, right.
There's a need.
if you go down to like there's neighborhoods in Brooklyn where or like down in like probably Rockland County, like
Mm,
enclaves of very like strict Orthodox Jewish enclaves that will only exclusively do business within their community. So
mm-hmm,
you want to buy insurance for your truck, you're buying it through somebody in your community. Schools, contractors, electricians, groceries, stores, I mean you name it. But we're not, that doesn't really exist up here.
Yeah. So why will you end up pulling your kids out come middle school?
Um, I guess a couple things. One is at some point that they have to just like get in, like matriculated into like the bigger system, so to say.
Yeah.
mm,
And we believe that middle school, especially for two girls, is probably the best time to do that. Also, the numbers of enrollment or enrollment opportunities at that level diminish. So it's not like there's not like 10 choices of where we could send our kids to school anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like
mm,
they're just going to go to public school.
That's true. Around here there's like elementary school through high school. There's like you if you want to go to a private Catholic school around here, you have a fair amount of options. Like
Mm-hmm.
from elementary school through high school. Was that the same case for you? Did you go to private school until middle school or high school, or did you not go to private school?
Yeah, private school till 6th grade.
Nice.
And then, you know, big public inner city school in Syracuse. So I went from a school of 85 kids, you know, to a class of 300 kids.
Yeah, of
You know,
like
seventh
every
grade was
walk of
300.
life.
Yep, exactly.
That's intense. What was that transition like?
Um, it was a little bit tough at first. Um, it was a little bit tough, but I loved it.
Yeah.
And like going to public school and like seeing the diversity from 7th through 12th, that was very different from K through 6, drove me to go to a certain type of college once I graduated high school. So I went to college in Buffalo. I went to SUNY Buffalo, and one of the reasons why was because it had such a diverse student body.
Hmm.
So, because I got into other schools and they were just, let's just say, a much more homogeneous. And I
Yeah.
just loved that transition of being around different people, you know, post elementary school.
That's
So
interesting to even have that perspective as like an 18-year-old male, because when I was 18 and thinking about colleges that I was going to, it was definite like diverse student body was not on my radar. There was a lot of things on my radar and that was not one of them. What were you going to say, Nick?
what is your so you talk about the diverse student body, but then going back to this neighborhood in Brooklyn where it's like everyone works within the community. You know,
Mhm.
when you look at both those, are you? I guess what I'm getting at is when you think about a community like that you only work within the community. I don't see that being a better option or an option that is as fulfilling as what you're talking about here. It's like you're strategically putting your kids through 6th grade, you know, to get well versed in your religion, and then pulling them and putting them into the, as you say, the bigger system, and having
Mhm.
more of a diverse student body. And when I think about these communities that work so intertwined, it's like, sure, at face value, like there's a lot of benefit to that. Everyone's supporting one another, but at some point, doesn't that hurt them like individually in terms of like personal growth?
I certainly think it does. But
Hmm.
I think that people that are like deeply ingrained in those communities don't think that way. I think that they
Yeah.
see it as the opposite, actually. I think that they see it as strengthening their identity and like strengthening their lineage, so to say.
Hmm.
But like we
But I feel like
listen, I'm just like a
I feel like that causes so much resistance, and that's where I see the issues arise when, like, you know, when it becomes so strong that you can't, you like, it's as though you're not allowing anyone else to be part of that.
you're 100% correct. And that's why I say like I don't agree that that's like the way, and that's why we're
Yeah.
not quite like that, you know. um I don't know, like to me I'm just a regular guy, you know, and like there's like I have this identity and a way of life that I don't necessarily share with people, but it's it's like all I
Well,
know
you're
and
sharing
all.
it. You're sharing it now.
Do you keep a
Well, I
kosher
think Tyler
kitchen?
shared it first. Yeah.
Yeah. You do?
Hmm.
I had a customer who got a hold of me. I don't know if you're familiar with like Lakewood. There's a pretty Lakewood, New Jersey. There's a pretty large like Orthodox Jewish community. One of the bigger ones outside of New York, and they all. It's not like super strict, but it's a pretty um heavy, like densely populated Jewish community. And one of the guys was like, he got a hold of me, he wanted some work done. It ended up being far from me, but he was like in kitchen sales. And he's like, yeah, I make so much, like he was Jewish. And he's like, I make so much money because they're putting up all of these apartment buildings here. and it's all Jewish people who keep kosher kitchens. And he's like, I sell 2 kitchens for every single townhouse and
Right.
condo and he's like, my business is just like blowing up right now because of that. When I first started working, where I worked is a town called Cherry Hill, and in our area, it like has a higher Jewish population than other areas. And a couple of my customers kept kosher kitchens. And then one of mine that I did a bunch of work for was like on the fence about it, and I mean, she couldn't have been that serious if she's like, it's too much money to do this. But I had a fair amount of Jewish customers when I first went into business, just in this area. But I thought that was interesting when he was like, yeah, I sell 2 kitchens for every single household, which was like insane to me when you see how much building is going on in there, and like all the townhouses, all the condos, and everything else. He's like, so yeah, I'm doing pretty well for myself right now.
Hmm.
All right, so to
Yeah,
get away from that, sorry, go ahead. You finish what you're
no,
doing, and then we'll get
I
on to
was
the
just gonna,
normal stuff.
I was just gonna say, I have a friend up here from Cherry Hill,
Okay. Yeah,
so
so
I don't
that
know
like
much
that's
about
where
it,
I
but
started work. That's where I started working. It was like close to where we lived when I got out of college. And it is, I don't, for one reason or another, there's just like a more dense Jewish population there. So like when I first started in business, a lot of the people that I worked for ended up being Jewish. But it's like now I'm in Medford, and I feel like it's a bunch of like hardcore Trumpers and farm boys and not as many Jewish people. um, so your business, you do a little
hmm
bit of everything. I
hmm
you know you partner with people. You're doing full builds, garage builds. You do concrete
hmm
work, plumbing work, everything. What would you say, like, if you had to describe your business, or if somebody gets a hold of you and they're like, well, what services do you offer? What would that conversation be like?
um, I would say like certainly the bulk of what we do is generally just remodeling work. We have done a couple new construction projects. Um, I will, and I people ask me all the time, Jeremy, what do you specialize in? I don't specialize in anything. I just tell people like I'm an all arounder. Um, and I think there's certain things that I really enjoy doing, and there's certain things that I gravitate towards. Um, but I will say this: I've pulled back from kitchens and bathrooms in the last couple of years. So any like by and large, unless it's for a really good repeat customer, if someone's calling for a kitchen or bath, I turn it down. Um, so
How
I've
come?
really gravitated a couple of reasons. The first of all, they're as you guys both know, they're very very intrusive, and
Hmm.
I think since COVID, expectations changed. And I think that procurement of things changed and quality control changed. And kitchens and baths have, I guess, like a lot of the aspects of kitchens and bath include procuring a lot of things, high quality control. Again, they're very intrusive to a client. And I wanted to pull back from all that stuff. So and there's some other like reasons, like some personnel things, guys that I was sort of working closely with that I don't work closely with anymore, that were sort of better at the finish side of things. I mean, I prefer the rough side of things. I prefer outdoor work. I'm not good at tile work. I'm not great at trim carpentry. I can kind of get by with trim carpentry. And again, kitchens and baths have a lot of tile and a lot of trim
Yeah.
carpentry. And,
Mm.
I can set cabinets like anybody else. But when it comes time to tiling a backsplash, putting up a crown kit, it's just not for me. I just don't enjoy it.
I find that so interesting. I don't know why. I'm like, for me, it's low risk, the interior work, and I guess it just comes easier to me. I mean, like I'm pretty sure we had a conversation once where you're like, yeah, I was doing some like ornate molding or like detail project, and you're like, I'd rather just be outside doing concrete. And I'm like, literally nothing sounds worse to me. Like, and I'm like, you're so much different than I am. I feel like you're somewhat of an old soul. Like, you do a little bit of everything, but you just want to be like outside doing labor intense work. And
Yeah.
like I feel like it's like, and this isn't intentional by you, but it's like the manly work. Like when you think of construction, it's building decks, siding, exterior work,
Hmm.
demolition. I mean, you were just fixing a bunch of rot and like sill plates on an old
Yes. Yep.
house a while
Yep.
back, and I'm like
Yep.
this is like construction work. This is what it's about. Working on like a couple 100-year-old house, like making it live longer.
Yeah. No, that's true. And like, let's just be super clear. Like, I don't excel at concrete flat work at all. Like, people don't call me because they're like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I heard you can, like you're a great concrete finisher." No, like we dabble every few years and
Mm.
sort of wonder why we're doing it, but I don't know. I there's just something about that part of construction, the being outdoors, the working on the rough side of things, that I just gravitate towards. I don't know what it is. It's just the way I'm wired. But yeah, like to your point, I would rather replace the sill beam of a 100-year-old house in cold weather than work inside somebody's kitchen putting up a crown kit like indoors in the winter. Like
Yeah,
that
that's
sounds like
insane.
torture to me.
I'm the opposite. Get me
we
inside.
I think we've worked outside in the winter every year since 2018.
And you're in upstate New York. I mean, not super
Yeah.
upstate, but like it's not
Enough.
an
Yeah.
easy winter.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
we built a custom home a couple of years ago, and I have a photograph. We were framing a detached garage, which was actually an add-on to the build, which was wild. We got pretty close to the end of the house, and he was like, "Well, I've got plans for the garage if you want to just kind of knock that out," which
while
was
you're here,
interesting. Right. So I have a picture of I think it snowed about 5 inches between 8 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, and like my tool bags are literally like filling with snow. We have to like brush off like all the sill plates and everything to build walls. We're building and sheathing walls on the ground, taping them, zip tape, and standing them up. So we have to brush all the snow off the sheathing before we tape it. But I don't know. I there's something about that I love that. I
yeah.
love that sort of like again, maybe it goes back to what we were talking about before. It's like just get through this process. The garage is going to be
Mm.
the garage when it's done, but you think not a lot of guys are out there doing that. I mean, certainly framers are. But I don't know. I just like it.
See, the this is where I listen. So I listen to what you're saying, and I see what you're doing. And it's very similar to when I see what Mike Girton does working on a roof or doing a roof repair. Like watching you and the way that you articulate that and what you're doing and how like thoughtful your approach is and articulate your approach is, it looks so enjoyable to me that it almost fools me into thinking that I'd like to do it. And then I would be out doing it and be like, this it's raining, it's cold, it's hot. Like you make it look so much. And like in my head, I think, like as you're saying, I'm like, yeah, it would be sick to be with a couple of your buddies and like out in the snow framing a house. And it'd be like 3 hours into it. And I'd be like, all right, I'm done with this. Like I don't need to. It's all like this romantic like ideology that I have of what it would be like. But then when I actually did it, I would be like, this sucks. I
I
don't want
think
to do
what it
this
I think what it
anymore.
comes down to, especially when you talk about framing and building the structure, and like it's gratifying because you're getting a lot is changing very quickly.
Sure.
where it's like,
100%.
when you frame a deck, it's like you go from foundation to having a dance floor. And then you
Hmm.
stand up that first wall, it's like, hell yeah, let's get that next wall up. Oh my
Hmm.
God, now we're closed in. Where it's, to your point, where it's like a tile backsplash, it looks great and it's work, and you can stand back and be like, yeah, now it looks even better. But
Hmm.
it is different. I say that, and I'm sitting here like very quiet because I'm going back and forth with which part did I enjoy more. Did I enjoy the framing aspect of it, or did I enjoy the finish aspect of it? And I think I think I'm on your side, in terms of framing, because of that reason, where it's like you're putting up material and making change really fast. Where
Hmm.
it's like I really appreciate the details and the fine details and the finish, but I enjoy all the prep that goes into, like, making sure that the finish ends up where it's supposed to. Where, like, for me,
Sure.
when I was self-performing, I always struggled with the last 5%. The last 5%, because it's not difficult anymore. It's just like, oh, I know I have to go and install that screw plate cover and touch up this and touch up that. That's not difficult. So I need to move on and go work on something that's more difficult. I think that's classic in our industry, where it's like that last 5%. That's why, guys don't get paid the last payment, or that's why, they're on to the next thing. It's like, yeah, but it's actually tied to something where it's emotionally difficult to when it's not emotionally difficult anymore, it's just not interesting to us.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. And I have a friend who's also a client that we've done a bunch of work for, who he's an architect, but he's more of a managing architect because they do a lot of design build work. And on the build side, they manage all of their own. They're one stop shop. They do
Mm.
everything. And he, a couple of years ago, maybe 2, 3 years ago, he approached me and said, listen, we've got these multi-million dollar houses and we have nobody to go in and knock out a punch list for the last 2 weeks of the build. And I said, God, that sounds like torture to me. There's a reason why you can't get guys to do it, because guys are
Yeah.
done. They're emotionally done on a multi-million dollar job. They're probably not literally fighting with other subs, but everyone's in each other's way. I mean, I don't know. I imagine there's some of that on your job sites, Nick, where there's just a lot of people around. People want to get paid, they want to leave. And, the thought of like masking off grout to make a perfect caulk joint against a shower door, it's like, no,
Right.
I don't want to be doing that. I want to get out of
Well,
there.
it's the same thing with our home care in our company, our post construction, our maintenance. It's like, a fireplace doesn't work. Can you come over and fix it? It was always something that would either I would task it with one of my supers. They'd be frustrated because they were on a job and they'd have to go back to another job to go address something, or I would go there.
Hmm.
Where that was a really hard position to fill, and we ended up with Matt as our home care tech, and he's great. But that he came in saying, I love doing like handyman stuff.
Great.
And it's like that. Yeah,
Listen.
that's great, because I like that would number one, I would never have the right tools. So I would go to Home Depot, I'd walk in the store and grab a 5-gallon bucket, and I would buy all the tools and the material I would need, and too much material. And then I'd end up with all these extra things. And I would never buy the good
Mhm.
stuff, because it's like, I got the good drill at home. I'm not going to buy another good drill. I'll just buy a
Right.
crappy one to use for this punch list. And you end up with,
That's a problem
yeah,
with punch lists, that you need every tool that it took to do the job and
yeah,
every material, but it's only for one
right,
small task.
right.
So it's like, oh, I have to punch out a bathroom or kitchen. I literally every tool that I used on this whole job to fit into this space for like 3 hours worth of work. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. I have a buddy who's he's a pretty big electrical contractor here. He's got 100 guys in the field. Does a lot of big jobs like college dorms, apartment buildings, institutional work. And he said to me, he's like, why don't you just get in some of these high end neighborhoods and just do handyman stuff? And I said, like, Adam, I'm just not wired that way. And to me, like, yeah, that might be a great business. And there are builders around here like Nick who have like what they call a concierge service. It just, I have no interest in doing that. Zero interest. I don't even want to do it on a kitchen or bath that I don't want to do in the first place.
Yeah, it's
I sound
true.
like I'm whining, but
So
you know,
with what you do with work, right? You say that you enjoy the rougher aspect of things and the framing and um what I would classify as like the more quintessential salt of the earth construction related tasks. But you've always, as long as I've known you, tried to be above like the status quo or integrate products into your systems, try new products. You're always, you have your finger on the pulse of what's happening within our industry. So have you always done that? Like, have you always felt that you've tried to be ahead of the curve? And also, how do you balance these very practical construction skill set with integrating these new tools and techniques and materials into them?
um, good question. I think gaining the knowledge largely used to come from magazines. It used to come from JLC, Find a Home Building, a little bit from the internet, you know, blogs, things like that. And then staying on top of things, I would say in the last 3 to 5 years, a lot of it's come through Instagram because so many people
Mm.
are putting out so much, including material manufacturers are I don't want to say they're putting out how-to videos, but they're showcasing what they have and how it works, and even having sort of like a some sort of conduit for getting in touch on the technical side of things. And so to answer your question, I have sort of always sought out the information of how can we do this a little bit better, right? And there's ways to do that, and those ways change. And maybe 5 years from now, there's going to be another avenue of how to gain that information. Um, I don't know if that answers your question, but
Do you
that
feel that, so your area, do you feel that, like, I would say that there's, and this is completely like my perception of just being around like the Sleepy Hollow Lake area, but it
Mhm.
seems that like a lot of the people doing the work in those areas have done it the same way for a really long time, and it's not the like a huge metropolitan area even up near Albany that you have like this influx of new technology, new tools, people and vendors bringing new systems and products into that market. Do you feel that there's a lot of people in your market that are like readily willing to adapt and adopt what you're proposing to them, or are you like really pushing the edge of what people will actually pay for?
I I think that I think that somebody will approach me for a job. It's usually a remodeling job. Again, it could be like a new construction job, and let's say it's a bigger job. Some of the material choices are going to be in the plans from the architect. So, like this house we built 2 years ago, for example, the plans called for, I don't know, maybe let's just say some sort of commodity wall sheathing with house wrap. And I I just said to the client, I said, I want to do something different. And he said, okay, no problem. And it was that simple. Same thing when it came to insulation. The architect spec'd out um, fiberglass for everything, wall cavity insulation, attic insulation. And I just said, hey, I want to use, are we allowed to say brand names on this podcast?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Say, I want to use Rockwool, for example. Here's
Oh,
all the
not that
reasons
one.
why.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I always forget like who the sponsors are. Here's all the bullet points why I want to use Rockwool. Sold, easy upsell. Now, if you're going through the trouble of building a new home, and it's a one-off home, it's not a production home. I'm not a production builder. I'm a remodeler. If we're at that point and we're having the conversation, he already has the financial means to build what he wants to build. So any pushing any of those other things, um, unless it's outrageous, it's not going to be a tough upsell, so to say. But I do have clients, um, I do have clients who don't have means like that, who will never build a new home, who, when it's time to put windows in their house, are going to put vinyl windows in their house. And it's my job, if I can't, or I'm not in a position, or shouldn't try to upsell them to something that's not a vinyl window, to make sure that that vinyl window is installed very well, and that the means and methods of installing that vinyl window are, top notch. And that's not something, it's the means and methods on something like that, that I'm not going to say to somebody, well, I'm going to use this type of sealant instead of that type of sealant. We're going to use this type of flashing tape, not that type of flashing tape. It's just what we're going to use, because ultimately I don't want to get the call back. So, hey, I want vinyl windows in my house. Great. This is what it's going to cost you.
Do you sometimes, and I guess this is coming from myself, but do you find those customers that have to be somewhat crafty with budget, and you may be using what for market's sake may be an inferior product, but then being able to install that in a way that you're creating a very valuable product and like a long lasting durable product for them? Do you find that to be like gratifying?
Um, I mean, I find most of the work that we do gratifying in the first place. So I wouldn't distinguish that that's more gratifying than something else. I don't really think that. I mean, it's gratifying to have a client that just appreciates what we're doing. I mean, we worked in an 1880s row house this past winter. Um, Same thing, and this is what I'm thinking of, is taking out all the old windows all the way down to the brick opening, building a new PT window buck, putting in new construction windows. They're just plain Jane vinyl windows in these new bucks that we've built, getting everything air sealed. She'd been living with vinyl replacement windows in the old window frame that were never air sealed. They were never insulated. The trim work
Weights in
was,
there, huge
yes,
voids.
yeah, like all that stuff. And so for her, just having new windows that are air sealed, it's like they could have been purple windows. She wouldn't have cared, because she just loved having new windows.
See,
So
and that's what I mean, even as far as gratifying. Like to me, sometimes those projects are more gratifying than putting in a Marvin window, an Andersen window, like a fancy European window that's airtight, because like that's expected with that, right? Like when
Mhm.
you have a
yeah, it's
product where
true.
it's not expected, to me, like I'm thinking of even in one of your articles where, and it may be that new house that you had built where you guys ended up building a pressure treated deck with cable rail, and like
Hmm.
the details that you integrated with waterproofing your exposed cuts with liquid applied flashing, and your half lap joinery and all that stuff with pressure treat to maintain a budget and still create a really beautiful product. For me, a lot of times that's more gratifying because you hit the customer's budget. It was less money for them, and you still like you knocked it out of the park with somewhat of an inferior product. When
Hmm.
like if you were to use a higher end product, like it would just be expected. And there may be things that you are not as happy about because you had a level of expectation that was so much higher. And when you do these jobs like this window job for this lady, the level of expectation is probably so low for them being like what they have, and then they see it and they're like, holy crap, like our windows aren't drafty, they're
Right.
not leaking air, they're watertight, like the entire house changed because of that. And to
Sure.
me, a lot of times, like, there's so much gratitude with those customers that it makes it more rewarding for me.
Yeah. I think like I'm also have, and I don't know if it's because of where we work or we don't have any like super like high end clients. You know, I guess the only like correlation I could make are like to Nick's clients. And I look at some of the projects that Nick does, and I think the clientele is different. And I don't know that the expectations are different, but I would imagine that they are. That if you're spending, you start adding decimals or not decimals, you start adding commas to jobs, like the expectation I would imagine just has to change. Um,
Uh,
and I don't know, but
yeah, I don't. Good.
no, it's just I think that I feel like we work for just a lot of regular people, you know,
Yeah.
Mm.
and the regular people that we work for are just they're just generally appreciative anyway. Um, but I'd love to hear what Nick has to say. If once you get into that upper echelon, are the expectations changing? Is it more difficult? That sort of thing.
I I mean, I started Nick can go ahead, but I feel that some of my earlier customers were much more enjoyable and more appreciative to work for than customers of recent years. Like, and I think that it's an entitlement thing. And
Mm.
like you said, a level of expectation, like, we're paying this much, we expect this. And a lot of those earlier customers were just so grateful for somebody to come in and be able to like spruce things up and hit their budget and give them a new space that, like, they don't care that there's a booger in their paint finish. Like,
Mhm.
they love it.
Well, and that's the thing is like I feel like I can't execute on that level or might not want to execute on that level. And I've talked to other guys, friends of mine locally or back home in Syracuse, who will say things like, if you can make your own terms, and certainly in like the industry right now, I think we'd all agree we could to a large degree just even pick our own clients. That just set yourself up for success, and if that success means you say no to what could potentially be a very lucrative job but has very high expectations. I don't know. Like, I think you guys could probably tell by now, just talking with me, I'd rather take the more mediocre job that might not have those high expectations. I think I'd sleep way
Mhm.
better at night. I think I would have certainly a higher level of confidence. I don't want to go into a job not feeling confident that I can actually perform that scope of work.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of expectation, and I think I'm with Tyler. I think early on, especially when you're doing more like maybe less expensive jobs and people are just happy that you're there and getting the job done. And I think the key to what Tyler said is like you're hitting their budget. Like you're going into it, and that's the expectation is like this is my budget, and you're able to accomplish the scope for that amount of money. In terms of like the more affluent clients, I don't think it's always like that scale always goes up in terms of what how their expectations change. Um, and there's this guy, I think on Instagram or something, he does these great videos about the difference between rich and really, really rich and the way they act. And he portrays the guy that's rich as like this arrogant asshole that thinks that he's deserving of the best service. And then the guy that's really, really rich is just like super understanding and gets it like, like it just, he's got his expectation. He wants to be treated well, but he also understands everyone's a human being. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I think that's a great way, at least for me, to reflect on all the people that we've worked for, and in terms of the fact that expectation is always high, and I oftentimes chase down clients that push that level of expectation really high. And yeah, I would agree with you. I probably sleep better at night if the expectations weren't that high. but I
Hmm.
like challenging ourselves, and I like, pushing
I
that.
really like to be beaten down emotionally.
I love to be told that I could be better every single day. Um, but the reality is, I think that our most difficult clients were those clients that were maybe new to wealth or new to money, and had an unreason like felt as though that now that they've made it, they get to kind of, demand a higher level of service, when it's like, no, that's no, you're getting a bigger house. Like, you don't get a bigger house and perfect execution. You want perfect execution, build a smaller house.
Right.
And, I think that's the challenging part. I guess, like, in terms of, advice and what I've learned, in, specific to expectation, is those expectations need to be set up front. And I know that sounds like obvious, but I think that a lot of expectations are left up to interpretation. And, and for me, we had a project recently where, I've talked about it on this podcast, but the expectations were just too high, like
Hmm.
incredibly too high. And we spent an enormous amount of time and money trying to make things perfect. And when we went through punch lists, they were like, there's a scrape in the wall here. And it's like, you have your iPhone flashlight on the wall 3 inches away from it.
Hmm.
And it's like, and they were like, well, we told you we wanted this to be, the walls and ceilings, everything to be absolutely perfect. It's like, I get it, but that doesn't exist. In
Right.
order for and that was on me, and I didn't set the expectation. We didn't talk about what the standards are. It wasn't until I think it was, like 6 months ago or something like that, that we were talking about imperfections in a wall. And I forget what standard it is, but in the like in some sort of standard, it says all defects will be measured 3 feet away from the wall or 5 feet away from the wall or something like that. Anything closer than that is considered, tolerable or passable.
Hmm.
And I'm like, that's the way we should have communicated it, not an iPhone flashlight 3 inches away.
Right.
So I think that, yeah, I think it does have to do with client, but um, it also, goes back to the builder. And sure, like, you can say no to those unreasonable clients up front if you're keen enough to understand that they might be of a difficult persona.
Yeah. So one of the classes that I teach at JLC Live, the title of the class is called Setting Client Expectations. And
Mm,
the class is taught from my perspective as a bags on remodeler. You know, what are some of the things that I have written into my contracts? What are the things that I try to articulate, like at that first phone call, whether it's pre-qualifying the client when I pick up the phone? If somebody calls and they're like, "Hey, I got your number. I want to build an addition and I want to start November 1st." Well, I've set that expectation right off the bat. Unless it's November 1st, 2024, we're not a good fit for each other, right? And so everything from
mhm,
like the pre-qualifying, the pre-construction, the during construction, the post-construction. And listen, I don't think I'm necessarily like an expert at setting client expectations. I think that it's if I'm in front of a classroom of whatever 80 people and I share my experience, the good, bad, and the ugly, I think that's relatable to a lot of other contractors that might be going through that tough process of handling expectations with clients. But you're right. I mean, certain things you have to put in writing, and certain things you have to even verbally just spell out really, really early.
mhm,
I with regard to who you're working for and the type of work that you do, I often see you doing a lot of things where you come up with innovative solutions to problem solving and conditions that seem to be like intelligent, creative choices for how to get from A to B that I don't think would be the standard way people would address things. Do you feel um I guess my question would be how are you balancing the quality and the durability with the affordability trying to serve your market?
Oh my goodness. Feel like you're You're first of all, you're asking a lot of what I think are tough questions. I didn't think that. I feel like you're like kind
Let's
of
go
digging
back to
deeper.
Russian Jews. Let's go back to Russian Jews.
Can we talk more about BMX instead? That's easy. Um, so first of all, thank you. I appreciate the nod. I don't think I'm a great problem solver, but there seems to be like a solution for everything that we do, and ultimately, and this is kind of a cliche, kind of a joke that I say, but it's true. Is like I think remodeling is problem solving, right? And I think you
Yeah.
both know that. It's like something got dumped in your lap and you have to figure it out. And often there's no literally or figuratively, there's no plan for that yet. Um, sometimes, um, sometimes it might not come from me. Like I've got, a full-time kid that I should say kid. He's 20 years old, works for me. He sort of has that problem solving brain. Um, we were recently building a set of outdoor steps actually last week, and I don't remember what it was that he thought of, but it didn't even come from me. It came from him. The kid's been working for me for I don't know 5 months, and it didn't come from me. Um, sometimes that problem solving and going what turns out to be going the extra mile to solve a problem. I hate to say it, sometimes comes out of my wallet. um, sometimes it doesn't because sometimes there are really unforeseen things that I might have in writing that say X, Y, and Z is completely unknown at this point. It will be billed at X amount of dollars per man per hour plus the cost of materials, and we can problem solve it and move on. And I feel like there's been a lot of times where I've problem solved stuff and just wanted to do it the right way, just so I would sleep better at night. And maybe it took longer, and maybe, I didn't really get compensated the way that I should have. But again, you just sort of like avoiding long term risk, doing it the right way. And, maybe that problem solving didn't turn into a home run financially, but you got it done and you move forward.
I still feel like with what you're doing, um, and the market in which you're working, it's breeding these opportunities for creativity and innovation for you. Where a lot of times you don't have, and I don't mean this in any negative sense whatsoever, but like if you don't have a customer who can just pay to fix anything like quote unquote the right way or like the best way, a
Hmm.
lot of times you have to value engineer a product that you are willing to lay your head on at night. And I think
Hmm.
that like you're in a market that affords you an opportunity to do that. And I mean, that's even like, I don't recall exactly what the project was, but you were installing sleepers for some sort of a porch like years ago
Hmm.
outdoors, and like the
Yeah.
solution for you to doing it is not one that I would think of, but I'm like, you know what, that works and that's really smart. And oftentimes I feel like those are the type of jobs where like you don't want to expand your budget, you don't want to expand your scope, and those are the projects that really like illustrate your skill set and your problem solving ability, because it's like, yeah, I could bring somebody in to tear this all out and start from nothing, but my clients can't do that and I need to serve them. And it's neat to see what those situations, like how they facilitate your best side.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate the nod again. Thank you. I guess I don't really think that deeply about it, to be totally honest with you. Which is why I say it's sort of a tough question. I'd have to think about it more again. Um, to me, it's just work. Like it's just problem solving. Just get it done. Try to get it done within the time and the budget allotted. And again, sometimes it might take longer, but I just feel better about it. And to me, feeling better about a job is just like I don't know. Sometimes that's just priceless. Like I have a tough time sleeping as it is. I don't want to say, listen, I cut corners. Maybe I didn't put something in writing, and I have to quote unquote like eat it to try to figure it out. And sometimes not. Like sometimes again, we do get compensated, but I never really thought about it that deeply. To me, it's just work.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit, you hired somebody, you said 5 months ago, but prior to that, and you're probably still doing it now. I know when you worked at Rachel's parents' house, you have like a handful of guys who are all owner operators that you will
Hmm.
team up on projects and each take a certain aspect of that and overlap trades if need be.
Hmm.
Had you always done that in your career? And like how, like from a specifics standpoint, like how does that work, right? So if you land a job and now you have 3 owner operators on a job, how are you ensuring that that job is affordable for these customers when you're trying to pay 3 owners to do a job, if that makes
Yeah. So
sense?
yeah, no, for sure. And that job at Rachel's folks' house is a really good example of 3 owner operators, all individually self-employed, all have all their own insurance requirements, all have their own tools, essentially only need as much direction as you like really need to give them to say, these guys are carpenters, right? To say, this is the scope of work. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. I'm going to do that. And
And let's clarify, Rachel's parents have a budget to hit. Like Rob is one of the cheapest men I've ever met.
well,
So
so
like
so it's
this isn't unlimited funds.
so it's I mean, that's a whole other topic of conversation that we could jump into, like as far as handling client expectations and keeping things under a budget. And Tyler, you certainly have a discerning eye for or I dare say like a critical eye for the like what we did there. And I could tell you like where we had to pull back, sort of getting closer to the finish side of things to stay within a budget. um so the guys that I most closely worked with for the longest period of time, um one is now a New York State trooper. We don't work together anymore because he had a career change, and I miss him dearly. Um, because again, it's like these guys don't need a lot of direction. Um, to answer your question, though, scheduling was an absolute nightmare because all 3 of us are bringing in work individually, right?
Yeah.
Or 2 of us, or so whatever it is. So it's like, okay, we're trying to think, you know, Ed brought in this job. He's going to need 1 person. What's the scope of work of the 3 of us who are of the 2 remaining guys? Who's best to go with Ed on that job? And then the
Is your
third
rate
guy,
different depending on if you bring the job in versus if you're helping, or is it everyone's rate the same and it's just balancing out?
correct, correct. So, and it's like, take that rate, take how many man hours we think it's going to take, and then, tell the client, like, hey, I work with these guys. They're trusted guys. They're all individually self-employed. They all carry their own insurance, et cetera, et cetera. And this is how we're going to do it on this particular job. Now, again, a lot of that has changed, because um, one of them had a career change and the other, we just, I guess you could say we've sort of, we now have like I would say, dissimilar interests in what we do. And again, that's sort of like back to the kitchens and baths thing. Um, so the biggest challenge of that was scheduling, because it's like you're not
Yeah.
just handling your own schedule, you're sort of trying to give and take and make sure that, hey, this one helped me out for 2 weeks on this job. I should at least oblige and try to help him out 2 weeks on his job. Hold on just 1 second. My dog's going nuts here because my kids are getting home.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like you're trying to appease the people working with you, but then you're also trying to serve
Okay.
your own customers. So it's like, yeah, I'm gonna so and so help me out, so I'm gonna help them out. But at the same time, like you have your own customers that you're like, no, I need everyone to come to my job to
Right.
serve my customers. So it's tough. And then like I guess from a cost standpoint, the efficiencies are where you're still coming in at a competitive cost, right? Because you think typically you have 3 owner operators. Now you're bearing the overhead of 3 people who are already not able to really disperse the cost of overhead through multiple employees, and now you're paying that 3 times on a project. So like that's where you have to come in with the efficiencies and the experience to be able to knock these projects out in a decent timeline, so that you're not dragging that project out and paying a premium for a longer extended time.
100%. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and that's why in a situation like that, you you really need to stay into like the 2 to 6 week job window. Because if you want to compare apples to apples, and if somebody's not even if anybody's just budget minded in general, because we do have some clients that do have bigger budgets, but even they need to know what something's going to cost. And there is a bottom line to everything, but you're right. Like you can't. I don't think that you could competitively do a multi-month project with 3 owner operators at the highest rate that they want to get, um, and still have a reasonable budget, apples to apples. But again, and it might be different in a different geographic locale, you know. And I think it also depends what people pay their guys, because some guys pay some. Let me say this correctly. Some contractors, employers, pay their guys. No, this isn't right. Let me really say this right. Some contractors bill out their guys at what they bill themselves out at.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
could yeah.
Good, bad, or indifferent. Um, and that's like a whole other conversation. And so
Yeah, it's tough.
if I understand you correctly, um, you would think that the cost should be lower if you're billing out employees versus billing out lead guys, owner operators.
Mhm.
Yeah, and like I look at the way that I make business as an owner operator, and like realistically, I make most of my money on my labor. And
Mm-hmm.
whoever's working for me, I do have a markup on that, but like my business, for better or for worse, is based around an exchange of my time for
Sure,
money. So if I
sure.
have somebody there, I'm making a little bit more, I'm covering their cost. If I don't have somebody there, I'm still able to make money. So I think if I have 2 of me on a job, unless we are creating 2x the amount of work, which like a lot of times on a smaller job that's not possible. Like if I had 2 of me on a job, there's not enough tools and space and work to go around to afford 2x of me per day. Like the output isn't enough. I could get a considerable output with myself and a helper at a much lower rate and come in at a more affordable cost or an affordable price point, right? You're overpaying for more than you need. If I was on a bigger job with the kosher setup, right? We had 2 different kitchens, and it's like I have business owner doing kitchen 1 and business owner doing kitchen 2. That's a different story.
Sure.
But if it's like one kitchen, right? I don't need two leads on that project, so it's overpaying. So that's where I feel like it's difficult. And then, all right, now we're doing it with 3. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what does everyone want to make here? Because if we have 3 owners on a job, like that's going to cost more than an owner and 2 helpers on a job for that day. Productivity is going to be different, but there are most jobs that are smaller jobs. Like you don't need that level
Mhm.
of experience on a project, and to overpay for that doesn't make that much sense.
Right. And it certainly doesn't work for every job. And again, it works for jobs with a shorter duration. Um, you know,
Yeah.
thinking back to Rob and Carolyn's job at the lake when we took the chimney out. It doesn't take 3 guys to like reweave shingles on the roof. It takes one and a half, right? It doesn't take 3 guys to reweave the hardwood floor. It really takes one. And so we sort of consciously said, okay, listen, I know what my strengths are. I know what I'm going to do, and so on and so forth with the other two guys. But you just can't do it on some bigger jobs. I think
Yeah.
it's just not there. Or maybe you can
I
with
feel like it
some
is
people that just have.
project specific. I feel like it's
Yeah,
project specific. Like, and
I
it
agree.
it comes down to being able to handle most of that work almost on your own. Like the
Hmm.
scope of work is like, okay, I can perform this task by myself. You can perform that task by yourself, and it's not like you're overlapping. Where I'm paying the owner of a company to be a helper for 4 weeks. Like, okay,
Right.
that's okay
Mhm.
for a day or two, but
Right.
like I
Yep.
can't. Nobody can afford that for 6 weeks straight.
Right. And
Um,
and that's where things have gotten a little bit more challenging for me in the last 1.5 years with us sort of our going our separate ways, and me pulling in um an employee. Is I have to be conscious of um what are this person's strengths or weaknesses. Are they really set up, like, do I just need to set them up with like a repeatable task, or is it more than a repeatable task? Like, can I leave and run out to the lumber yard and feel good about leaving them to do X, Y, and Z? Or do they have to come with me? Now nobody's getting anything done on the job. And so that over the last year and a half um, has been a little bit tough for me trying to figure that out. Um, because some of these jobs are like, it's 1.5 people that are needed on the job. You don't need 2 people on every job that we do. And sometimes you need three, and maybe you make do with two. Um,
it's also challenging that like with what we're doing, it may be one way in the morning and a different way in the afternoon. And it's like
Definitely.
I feel like that even with the guy I have working with me now, where I'm like, all right, there's certain days where I can put you on a task all day and it frees me up to do what I have to do. And those are like the most productive days, the most profitable days. I feel like I'm providing the most value for my customers. And then there's some days where I'm like, I feel like I need a helper. And those are decent, right? But I still feel like we're not getting as much done because it's like the 1.5 people. And then there's some days where I feel like I really just need me and I'm paying somebody to shadow me. And I'm
Hmm.
like, this is stressing me out. Like,
Oh
this
yeah.
is really stress. I almost just want you to I'll pay you for the rest of the day to go home because I feel like the productivity is going to be the same, but I'm not going to be sitting here in my head thinking I'm paying you how much per hour. Like my customers are paying how much per hour for it.
Yeah.
But I just keep telling myself like I have to look at the big picture and
Right.
I have to extrapolate this over the entire project. It's not
Uh-huh.
this one 4 hour window. It's not this day. There's going to be days where it's very productive and days where it's not quite as productive instead of just like looking at exactly what's going on at that second and be like, can't you do anything right now but sit behind me and watch me do this because I'm stressing out so bad right now.
Yeah. I mean,
It is
I'm
challenging.
it is challenging. I'm lucky, and that has been like the biggest, definitely the biggest newer challenge for me. I mean, listen, I've been doing this for 18 years, and I've sort of always had these like partnerships with guys, right? And
Mm.
so, to have like a pure employee now, it's just a very different responsibility, and it's a very different, you know, thinking about payroll, and thinking about cash flow, and thinking about working capital, because he needs to get paid no matter what. Like, it's different
Yep.
for me, you know. Um, I could skip a couple weeks if I need to, and he could, but I don't think it's not right to not make payroll. So um, that's definitely been a challenge, and I have to say I'm blessed because the kid who works for me now is also doing a remodeling project at his parents' house. And so if I'm like, look, we're going to have a 5 hour day today, I have to leave at 2 to go record a podcast. He's like, no problem. I'll just go home and work on plumbing or something, you know?
Mm.
So I've been lucky in that sense with who I have working for me right now. And I hope he sticks around forever because he has a lot of like pure talent. He's very agreeable to anything. When I came here to record this, I set him up to do stuff, and I'm confident and comfortable that it got done well. And he's
Better be
20 years
careful.
old.
Nick's gonna try and hire him.
Well, I'm sitting here listening to you guys talk about this, and I think about from like our self-performing carpentry. We have forever fluctuated. We've had a ton of carpenters, and then we
Mhm,
dip down, and then we work with subcontracted carpenters, and and then we have conversations with these subcontracted carpenters, which they're like usually a 1 or 2 man show, and they're their
mhm.
own boss, and they
Like
typically
me.
bill out at a higher rate, and but like I posted something the other day on my personal Instagram about billable rates and got a little flack for it, but a lot of guys just misunderstood my point there. But this is a prime example of it. It's we're going to bill out our carpenter at say $75 an hour, right?
Hmm.
Obviously they're not making $75 an hour. There's burden and then there's additional profit,
Hmm.
but it's also market rate where it's like if I know I can go to a owner operator and they're going to bill me $75 an hour. So if
Hmm.
I have to supplement from if I have an employee, I'm going to bill them all at the same as if I bring in a sub.
Hmm.
But I do oftentimes like the reason we ebb and flow is that we see benefits of having employees and training them and building them up
Hmm.
and over time like having this core group of guys, but then we flip and then we find a bunch of great owner operators that it's like, man, these guys are great, they get it, and they just want to they want to show up, they want to get work done, and they have this incentive to get the job done and move on because they have
Hmm.
something else right behind it. And
Those are the best subs. The
what?
owner operator subs.
Yeah, and we've seen a huge benefit to it, and I mean, frankly, like there's a handful of guys that are owner operators that I, and I know that I think some of them listen to this podcast that I've offered them jobs, and they're like, "What's the difference?" It's like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Well, I already work for you. Like anytime you need me, I'm here. Why would you? Why do I need to be on your payroll?" And
Right.
I'm like, "I don't know. So you wear my T-shirt, like." I'm
It
like,
is though. Those are like the best subs, and I've had subs that started out that way and then grew, and it's a different experience and it's a different product. And
and
like,
that's an interesting thing where it's like even right now we're going through where we have this list of subs that some of my team has said, hey, we're not going to work with these guys anymore. I'm like, what? I've worked with these guys since I started my business 9 years ago, 10 years ago. And they're like, dude, they're not performing. And then I'm like, what do you mean they're not performing? And then I'm like, oh, well, you got to work with him. Like, yeah, his guys are okay, you got to work with him. And they're like, he doesn't do it anymore.
yeah,
He
uh,
like he doesn't even answer his phone.
I'm going through
I'm
that with
like,
my
shit.
electrician right now, and it's like I loved my like I still like them, but
Yeah.
like I got a different product, and the price it's not like the price point the same or if not more now because there's a higher
Right.
overhead with having these employees. So it's not like I'm getting a lesser quality at a lower rate. I'm getting a lesser quality and like I still get close to that at the end, but it's more work on my part and I might be paying more. And I'm like, this is tough. I wish you hadn't shown me your earlier hand because I feel like this is like this is worse. I'm paying more for a lesser product. But it is tough. I know that we are winding down on time for you. So what I wanted, the other things I wanted to ask you, Jeremy, you're teaching at JLC again this year.
Yeah, so I'm going to teach a class in the conference session. I don't remember the exact title, but it's something like um, coordinating trades and the order of process. So
Mm.
um, really, it's more about the order of process. Meaning, and I'll give you just one example that I'd like to share, like with people in my classroom session. If a you've got an addition or a bathroom or a house that's in the framing stage. Plumber comes in to set a tub, but you're not ready for insulation, right? Someone's got to insulate behind that tub, right? So are you going to just throw some insulation back there and air seal behind that tub. That's like out of the order of operation, right? Because that would typically, insulating would typically come after all of your rough mechanicals are in. So, and I think that class could be beneficial to a remodeler, a project manager, maybe a GC, somebody new in the trades that doesn't think, hey, guess what? We're framing an addition. We need to figure out how to insulate the rim joist before we put our subfloor deck down. And I think all along the way, there's all of these things. That order of process has to get sort of turned backwards sometimes to make sure that you're doing things thoroughly. Maybe roughing in wires somewhere before there's a wall, putting in wire drops somewhere because the electrician won't be able to, drop wires when the wall's built. So I think there's a lot of things like that. Flashing details that get overlooked because, who's doing some of these flashing details? Is it the sider? Is it the roofer? That's a super common one. Is it the
A
guy?
perfect example.
Yeah, and you just went through that on your gig with the stucco and the windows.
Yep.
It's like something went out of order here, right? So that's my
Yeah.
long-winded that's my long-winded answer to what I'm teaching. It's something like, and again, uh, coordinating trades in the order of process. And coordinating trades, if you're self-performing, like we self-perform a lot, maybe it's just thinking about how we're doing that in-house. Or again, if you're a project manager or a GC, somebody has to be on those details, making sure that things get done in that right order.
So, I mean, the fact that you're teaching that, anyone that's listening to this, I was going to say, if you want to be a a good site super, this is what you need to understand.
Yeah.
Being proactive and understand what happens and when it happens and how to optimize downtime. You want to be a good site super, you find efficiencies and you beat the schedule, beat the budget, and you create a lot of value for your client and whoever, like the builder that you're working for.
I mean, like I was reading one of your articles, Jeremy, where you said you were building that house and you were going to install the deck. So you installed the ledger for the deck like
Mm-hmm.
prior to getting your doors in and everything
Mm-hmm.
else, so that like when you were lapping all of these tape based flashings, like if you put
Mm-hmm.
your door in and your sill flashing is a tape based flashing and it's going directly onto zip, now how are you supposed, and your ledger's right underneath that, how are you supposed to flash up underneath of that door with
Mm-hmm.
your ledger? And it's like, well, let's put the ledger on first,
Sure.
flash, then drop our sill pan flashing and over that,
Yep.
and then our door. And like just thinking ahead to situations like that, they're going to create like a much longer lasting product. When it's a new build, it should be that way. Installing a deck after the fact, completely different story. Like
Sure.
address if you want to pull that door, or figure out a solution, or that door has to be replaced in 5 years anyway. I'm comfortable with this until that door gets replaced. But like thinking ahead and looking at areas and situations that may be slightly out of order, where it's just not like, yep, insulation doesn't get done until rough ends are all over. Like, now you can insulate like before the fireplace people come in and put their fireplace board in the chimney chase and air seal and all that stuff, because if you don't do
Mm-hmm.
it then, it's never going to get done. I do think that's a super important thing. So how can people sign up for those classes?
So JLC Live, this is, just to be clear, this is for Providence, Rhode Island in March of 2024. I believe the JLC Live website is just jlclive.com. All
Mhm.
of the information is all there, whether it's the conference sessions, which to be clear are like the classroom sessions, or it's the expo floor or the trade show floor, I guess you want to call it, with all the vendors, and then all the guys that do building clinics on the show floor, aside from the guys and gals that are teaching in the conference session. It should all be on the JLC Live website.
Yep. Cool. So check it out. Sign up for Jeremy's class. We appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on, and it was good to chat. I'm unfortunately have like a really bad gift of gab, so I could just keep going if you wanted.
No, we'll have to get you back on, dig into some Jewish heritage a little bit more,
I think we need to do
some
some
more
research. We need to
BMX
do some
racing.
we're gonna do some research first, and then we'll come prepared.
Yeah, I
But
don't know
yeah,
if you guys looked at the questionnaire that I filled out prior to this, but there's other stuff there that we could chat about. Some other ventures that I've tried to dabble into that, let's just say, didn't work.
Well, let's do
yeah,
this.
I would love to be honest.
That email chain that you had going to schedule this, just reach back
Hmm.
out. Let's get you back scheduled for another episode.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome.
We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Appreciate it,
thanks for
man.
having me
Love
on. It
everything
was
that you're
great.
doing. We're also Nick and I will be at JLC. I think we're teaching some classes too, so we'll have to get together at that point.
All right,
We
cool.
are.
All right, man. Well, have fun with the kids. Good luck at gymnastics. I think you said it's gymnastics tonight, and good luck. Hopefully, your daughter gets back to BMX racing soon.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, man. We
All right.
appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Dude, I could sit there and listen to you guys all day. Because I feel like you guys are a perfect yin yang.
Yeah, I like Jeremy. I really have only met him the one time. It was funny with, like I said, he worked at Rachel's parents' house a bunch and was like a savior
That's
to me
such a small
because
world, man.
I was like, I don't have to go up there.
Yeah,
He's
right.
trustworthy. Like Rachel's parents loved him. He did a great job. And like it freed me up from having to go spend time at the lake working on their house, which is not what I wanted to be doing. So yeah, he's a really good guy. Super humble. I love what he's doing. If you don't follow him, give him a follow on Instagram, social media. Sign up for his classes at JLC, like very salt of the earth, belt on, remodeling contractor, zero ego, very knowledgeable. He's a good follow and a good guy.